All right. Hi there. My name is Andrew. If you've ever interacted with me on Reddit or Instagram or some of the online places, you can pick up knives on the secondary. I go by Knife Rabbit or Total Hat on Reddit. But I've been working on this collection for about 2 years now. Kind of early on, I started to develop an interesting system and some sort of guidelines for myself about how I would conceptualize it. That being that I couldn't get anything by any two knives by the same maker or designer or brand. This definitely limits a lot of options, and then sort of as I began collecting, more and more sort of specific guidelines developed. And I just wanted to do a walkthrough of the collection because I feel like I pretty much completed my goal. And it's been a long time coming, and I'm moving a lot of these. And I just wanted to do a sort of nostalgic time capsule of a walkthrough. So, as you can tell just by looking, a lot of these have sort of pairs. I divided them in like pairs. There's some gaps you can see, and I'll explain the reason for that. But we can start at the top here, and then I'll explain also the gaps in that regard. So I have a idea of a knife that I want to put here. So I guess in some sense the collection's not complete, but I don't really know what that knife would be. And I also feel like I accomplished trying out all the things that I wanted to try out in the first place. But there's a French maker by the name of Olivier Scua, who has a really interesting piece that I think could fit here really well, but that's kind of loose. Regardless, you can tell that there's like pairings on most of these, and most of the pairings have a very aesthetic factor to them. Even down here, there's sort of like a aesthetic essence that binds each set together. First up, though, we'll take a look at is the Custom Knife Factory. Snex Terra. This is a Russian knife, OEM'd in China by Tan Snex. When I first discovered this knife, I saw it in a picture somewhere, and I was like, wow, that is like the most perfect design. Like it spoke to me so clearly. I love the sheep's foot. I love the blade hole. I love how slender the whole thing is overall. And as I did a bit of research about it, I realized that I was kind of late to the game. It's a bit of an old piece. It's kind of hard to come by. And there's really an interesting novelty to it, which is that the whole thing is a toolless disassembly. You can just kind of pop certain pins out. For example, if you push down on this, the pin comes out, and you can then take this clip off and then use this part of the clip to unscrew the pivot, which is why it's shaped like that. So I'm not going to do a disassembly right now. I just wanted to show this off. Probably one of the most beautiful polished blade finishes I've ever seen. Just a really stunning knife. And the overall length of this in millimeters is 202. So it's 202 millimeters. Pretty good action. It's on loose ball bearings. Like it's caged. What do they call those? It's like the bearings that can fall out of the cage. They're not caged, but they're free spinning. I don't know. There's a cage. They're not free spinning, but I'm using all the wrong words. Anyways, the reason that it's important that this is 202 millimeters overall is because I kind of started to conceptualize the whole collection as far as length. And we'll talk about that pretty soon here. So that's the first one. What would be paired with that is, like I said, I'm thinking either a Clotesley Michael Walker, one of their collaborations. It's an old piece. I've never been able to track one down yet. Either that would go there, or a knife by Olivier Scua, a custom, and that's about 205 millimeters. So there's sort of like a very subtle length increase and decrease on each pair. So that one's there. I'm never ended up getting a pair there. This one is missing a pair also for a really interesting reason, and same as this one, is that I have come up with my very own design of a knife, which sort of bridges the aesthetic between these. It has all the things that I desire in a knife, and I would put that at 200 millimeters because this is 198 millimeters overall. So you can see it's sort of like a visual bridging of transitional sort of aesthetic and style and size. So this would be like 204, 205, 202. This one would be 200. This would be 198. So it's about 2 millimeters increments going downward. And so I'm going to have this made. I'm also going to have this one made eventually. And so that's the reason I couldn't, I guess, complete the collection. But I would say that I did complete it because I've tried a lot of knives in this spot and a lot of knives, even more in this spot. And I've tried so many. And the quality of and substance and rigid things that I prefer in knives are really hard to, I don't know, I'm picky is what I'm saying. So I've tried a lot of things here and here, and none of them just quite fit. You know, I found things that aesthetically worked really well, but just was like a little thick or a little heavy, or just didn't quite have the action I wanted, or just wasn't quite executed the way. Like, the reason I have all of the knives that I do is that they all hold a sort of substance or aesthetic or feeling or quality to them that isolates them as a standalone piece that's really strong, as well as how well it fits in the collection for a myriad of reasons, which are, you know, you've already started to pick up, I'm sure, quite a lot of them. Anyway, so a custom piece would go here, and it aesthetically would look very similar, kind of like a perfect bridge between these two. So, yeah, maybe you can imagine some elements there. Really good ratios. But moving along, this is the Mini Tempest, Sharp Eye Design Mini Tempest. I've had a lot of configurations of this knife. I've often swapped blade or hardware or various different things, and I had a black blade for a long time with a silver handle and black hardware and kept swapping things all around, and I finally decided to settle on this one, which is almost the original configuration, except I put black screws and a black clip in this version, along with a black lock bar insert. So it's sort of like a one-of-a-kind, kind of special. It's definitely the build that I would prefer the most. Really, really love this knife. Something about it has just always resonated with me that I just like kept trying to figure out the best version of it. And one of the most impressive ratios, I mean, for example, let's just compare it to the one further down. Like, handle is way shorter, but the overall length is just a little bit longer. Really, really impressive knife. I've always loved this. Specifically the Bowie, or the Bowie, however you want to say that. I know a lot of people don't quite like it. They might prefer the standard version, but beautiful gold dark matter carbon fiber inlay. The hand satin is so nice. Like, I don't know. The fact that you can reverse flick this, some people maybe can't, but I love reverse flicking and I love front flipping. Those are definitely my preferred methods of deployment. It's just really became a strong heavy hitter for me. So that one is what comes next. Let me rearrange here. And this is 198 millimeters overall. Next is something that I think is probably one of the most underrated knives. This is the Monroe Cypher Mini in the silver, or bright is what they call it. This knife has probably the smoothest action. It's really hard to, you know, I'm shooting downward, I can't. It's just, and there's just enough of a fuller on that I can reverse flick it as well. I think this is an incredibly underrated knife. It retails for about $450. Secondary, you can get it like half that price. Not too difficult. I love this knife. This is right about 196.5 millimeters, kind of maybe 197. So it's kind of, you know, I'm kind of breaking the rules, I'll admit, just a little bit there. But yeah, there's that one next. Let me move this stuff down. Sorry about that. Should have planned ahead a little better. Next is something that I don't know why it's kept up with all of these for so long. It's a really obscure, just kind of random Chinese brand. It's called NOC knives. Maybe that'll focus. There you go. NOC, and it is the MT20. Just a really kind of unique Japanese Tanto style blade there. Really straight, you know, very minimalistic looking, kind of like futuristic as well. I've always called it my Star Wars trash can. Surprisingly smooth action. Front flipper only. You know, if people don't like that, maybe that's a bit of a limitation, but yeah, something about it has just kind of stuck with me. Really interesting pivot design, real big. It's definitely thicker and a little bit heavier than majority of the knives I have, but for some reason it's kind of stuck with me. I will admit that this is kind of a stretch of an aesthetic. I've tried so many knives throughout this whole process, and this definitely looks really excellent with a brown Cortex. I've had that with there for a long time, but honestly, I prefer this to a Cortex. So, and little sidetrack, these used to be a pair, which you can see makes sense, especially closed. That looks quite good together, and they're very similar lengths. But this is 195, like 194. So this is like 194, 196, 198. This would be 200. This is 202, 204. So you get the idea. Some of these numbers change down here, but you generally get the idea. I'll go a little quicker now. This is my Shirogorov Neon NL in the Crazy Micarta. I think this is a forever knife, an LMAX. Seriously, I like I said, I prefer front flippers and things that I can reverse flick. This is technically standard flipper only, but it's such an impressive, what's the word? Pressure. What is that word? I don't know. Something. It's a really impressive knife. I don't think I've ever handled a better action on any knife ever. I love this thing. It's sort of a golden standard for me. I think it's the best drop shot ever. Perfect control, perfect sort of hydraulic close. Just huge fan of that. And I've got it paired with my Dawn V1, actually. I've got the Timascus kit on there. And I actually swapped out I used to have a V2, and I put the V2 blade on here. Surprisingly, the lockup is better. The V2 blade has more jimping. And once I swapped the blades, I was surprised that the lockup on both knives was better. This is a pretty heavy hitter, pretty modern classic, if you will. Excellent front flipper, excellent reverse flick. Really, really fun knife. Great ergonomics. I love this thing. I ended up keeping the silver pivot collar and the silver clip. Usually the silver version comes with a purple pivot collar, but if I ever take the Timascus kit off, I can just swap it to full silver, just like a super nice, minimal, clean version. I prefer the V1 because it's a bit thinner and because you can adjust the, a frame lock pivot tension a lot better. Yeah, beautiful knife. Like, you can't really ask for much more. I believe it's OEM by Beztech. But yeah. So, I mean, I will admit too, that's kind of a forced pair. There's plenty of similarities, but it's not mind-blowing. Next is the Maverick Oscar. I've got number 44. Absolutely beautiful knife. American custom or kind of semi-custom. This was a really interesting blade. It's got sort of a satin and stonewash. Let me see if I can get the lighting right. When you get the lighting just right, you can see that it's also been stonewashed. I'm not sure if that camera's picking it up. But yeah, I mean, this is just like, it kind of opens itself. Got a nice detent ramp on there. It's absolutely magnetic fall shut. Nice reverse front flip. You can reverse flick. The thumb studs are kind of placed at a weird geometry. It takes a little bit of getting used to it. But yeah, that's what's next. Really beautiful piece. I've handled a Rosie by Oz Machining. I've handled a BBM. I've handled I have not handled a Lamia. But what else have I handled? I've handled so many knives, especially in the custom range, especially in the American custom range. And honestly, I think Nick Marshall's doing probably the best work. This thing's just an exquisite, exquisite, beautiful piece. So that's next. Then I've got the Southard Mini Tolk. This one's a little bit older. I've kind of stumbled upon this. Cool, it's got satin flats and a sort of polished stonewashed blade. Really beautiful. This is a Koa inlay. It's actually anodized, like a very subtle sort of gold. I think probably like 10 volts or something like that. This one's cool. It's got the copper, a single copper pivot collar, not both sides, and then a copper backspacer. This is, I don't know, very similar to the Shirogorov functionally. I managed to reverse flick it off the grind. Not quite as smooth. I would put this in a very, very similar category to this. It matches up in most regards. Kind of different ergonomics, a little bit more forward leaning. Obviously a different grind, but yeah, really beautiful piece there. Yeah, a little older, not M390 or anything, but I mean, who needs more than 20 CV? US, beautiful, beautiful knife. Ooh, ooh, there we go. And to just kind of catch you up, this was 194, this is 192, this is 191, this is 190, and this is 189. So like just 1 millimeter increments going on here with a similar aesthetic, a similar slenderness, thinness, weight, you know, really preferences that I like. As I previously mentioned, I have my own custom design here that I'm gonna eventually get made, which would kind of bridge the gap between these two. Again, the sizing gets a bit bigger now. This is 181 millimeters. This was going to be 185. This is a really cool piece. This is a Wingman Ferris with a Lee Williams kickstop, which it's sort of like a flipper that detaches in use. So it doesn't go to the front, so nothing's in the way there. Got a lot better ergonomics. This used to come with it came with a different kind of pattern on here. I've got these titanium inlays customized myself, sort of stonewashed, or not stonewashed. I guess they're kind of like, I don't know, smoke washed, stonewashed, blackened type of thing. The coolest Tonto I think I've ever seen. Crazy grinds, compound, pretty thick blade stock, especially for how narrow it may be, but like, man, this thing is robust, burly, beautiful, integral knife, very, very skeletonized inside. I don't think you can quite see. If you take the inlays off, it's just like almost hollow, just like little cross hatches. Beautiful, beautiful piece. I've improved the action, so it's pretty darn drop shut. This is the only knife that I have that is exclusively flipper, and it's just something cool, satisfying about the kickstop that Lee Williams did. So yeah, this is it's kind of an obscure one. Not a lot of people have this or know about it or are familiar with it, but I don't know, it's really, really calls to me. I've always really liked a Tonto. A lot of people don't, so that's a beautiful piece I love. So I've been told, you know, you can't have a collection without a Chris Reeve Sabenza. I do have one with a Tonto. This one's Magna Cut, kind of a newer one. I kind of was able to pick one out from a variety of different wood inlays. So I got like this specific kind of more striking pattern. And then I had it sent straight to Idaho to get an extra blue thumb stud put on and a blue lanyard pin and standoff pin. You know, just classic Sabenza with a wood inlay as a Tonto. A lot of people say you can't flick these, but I've never had much of a problem, even reverse flicking. Maybe I'm just crazy. I have no nails. Maybe you could tell I don't have the greatest looking nails. It's my worst feature, but definitely gives me some power in the knife world. Being able to reverse flick, I think, you know, get a little more meat of the finger in there instead of so much nail. So classic, love it. It's got such a good soul. I've had so many of these and even sold this exact knife and bought it back. Like, I'm just like, that's me, that's mine. I got to keep that forever. Next, you know, a Benchmade. Of course you need a Benchmade. I think this is the most compelling Benchmade design. You know, Osborne does good stuff. I prefer the mini. I don't like the weight on a lot of Benchmades, so I added a Flytanium copper backspacer and thumb studs. And this blade actually is for the aluminum one, so kind of higher polished, which I think improves the action on the G10 scales. I don't have any other G10 in my collection either. You know, that's my only micarta. So I typically don't really go for that. Do not want a deep carry clip. I find it kind of obnoxious looking, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's a Benchmade. It's an Osborne. It is what it is. I'm sure you've handled something similar or whatnot. But yeah, the little extra weight definitely gave it a good boost. I wanted to diversify my collection to some degrees of lock mechanisms as well. I ended up finding that I prefer bolster locks and frame locks for the most part, but I've had my fair share of button locks and liner locks and, you know, lock bar access, whatever you want to call that. So, this is 181. This is 176. This is 171. So kind of like 5 millimeter increments, kind of downward. Good aesthetic bridging here. These are okay. I think the inlay really helps the shape here, kind of brings it together when it's open. Next is a Richard Rogers OEM Slim Utility, or the Slut people call. I've had a green one of these before and I sold it and then I tracked one down again, and man, it's just got this magic lightness for like how light it is. It's crazy that the blade can just fall like that. Reverse flicker, I guess you can thumb flick that pretty well, but no other opening deployments. Yeah, focus. Really beautiful. It just did something right. Really cool, sort of pearlescent ano on all of these. There's like a green gold, a blue purple, blurple as they say. He fairly recently released his X Mid, which is a little bit bigger version of this. Just I think like half an inch longer overall, so 0.25 on the blade, 0.25 on the handle, or however the mouth works. But you know, just super thin, very lightweight, just impressive knife. And like pretty sizable in the hand, honestly. It feels like better, it fills the hand better than this. This almost feels a little claustrophobic with that. I think it's, especially if you have bigger hands, this is definitely a little bit easier to adjust to. But this is a 167 millimeters overall, so just about, you know, or in that close to 5 millimeters down range. Next is the Kavalshimo. I feel really special. I was able to get this swapped before it was sent to me. So usually it comes in all black or all silver, but I had some connections and they could swap the blade and all the screws in the backspacer and the clip to the silver on the black one. Just a cool little reverse flick, front flip, super robust, aggressive Tonto, really interesting design. I mean, they crammed so much blade in there. Honestly, it's maybe a little bit too close to the back there, if that's focusing. But yeah, just a really interesting knife. Definitely not a common one, pretty obscure, but you know, it definitely fills the hand. It's probably the second or the smallest knife I have. And definitely not lacking in any weight or room on there. You can get grip all the way up here. I mean, I've got pretty small hands, but you know, fills it up pretty well. And as I started collecting, I realized that there's a few categories, or I guess there's a few specific knives that I really liked, but didn't quite fall into this general theme. So I kind of developed little sub collections. We'll end here because it's the best, and kind of goes down from there, I guess you could say. This is a Boker Kensei. I think it's called the LFL07. I did cut the back off. It you know, usually comes with like a little bit more space here and a lanyard hole up there, kind of like going around like that. But I kind of like holding knives like this, even though it's not very useful. If anything, maybe people stab like that, but I find this very comfortable, and I like having that angle be a bit better for that. And also, it's like, you know, just improve the ratios if you can. It's like right there now. Is that focusing? Yeah. The clip basically goes just past. It's a real deep carry now. I was immediately drawn to Kensei's work when I first started getting into knives, and also Boker. I thought at the time that I wanted a blade that was completely housed in the handle. Little did I know reverse flicking existed, but this is a really cool piece because you can, you know, traditionally flip it, and it's completely hidden in the handle. And you can front flip off that little nub as well. And it's just like nothing comes out. So a knife that you can front flip and, you know, traditionally flip with no flipper tab sticking out anywhere. Very, very cool. Hand rub satin, Kensei. Yeah, just a good user piece. You know, just like lightweight, sleek, thin blade stock, slicey. This is honestly the type of thing that I carry. Like, I would much rather carry something thin, sleek, easy. So there's that. I paired it with a Spyderco because, you know, of course I need a Spyderco in the collection. And I also wanted a lockback. And I ended up stumbling upon this old Jess Horn sprint run of the baby horn. It's a lockback with a clip. Not only that, but maybe you saw. Ooh, I got this. Reverse flickable lockback. Single-handed use. It's so cool, so rare. Just an uncommon little thing, some things that I really value, and yeah, just equally thin, slicey, excellent ratios. I don't think this is all gonna fit in here. Let me throw that to the very edges of the screen. So yeah, just some slicey stuff, some old classic makers, you know, iconic classic brands. I mean, you need a Boker, you need a Spyderco, you need a Benchmade, you need a Sabenza, you need a Shiro. You need a Kershaw, Ken Onion Kershaw leak. Not much to say. I think this is a US made one, so it's a little bit older, and that makes me feel very happy. The kind of theme of these two, first off, there's the aesthetic. They're both tip down carry. You can reverse the clip on this, but see where my middle finger lays? Like, it's not comfortable if you reverse the clip. It does not lay right at all in hand. So ergonomically, it's better to keep it this way. But I don't know. Oh, this will work. I just think it's kind of funny, you know, Kershaw leak and a Gerber. Gerber actually designed by Rick Hinderer. This is called the Torch 1. Yeah, you can pretty easily tell it's a Hinderer design. This is the first pocket knife I ever had. You know, I gotta keep it. It's classic. You can actually flick it. I actually put this on washers instead of like the Teflon or whatever crap that comes with that plasticky white stuff, just for the sake of getting it centered. It's pretty hard to flip, you know, if just on the very, very tip. If you get a lot of action, you can get out, but it doesn't even lock up. Just crap. But, you know, for me, childhood, nostalgic, this is like pinnacle cool knife, like some, I don't know, hunting dinner at a church or something I went to. My dad won it. I was like, I gotta get one of those for the collection. So iconic designers, iconic brands, crappy, cheap, whatever, classic knives, whatever. So these are the two interesting kind of customs that I have. Both Japanese. This is a piece by Du Hara, son of Koji Hara. I think it's a production on the blade, but then sort of hand assembled and hand done on the scales. You can see the wood isn't really matching up, and like everyone's a little bit different. He only made, I don't know how many of these, but not that many. It's a really cool mechanism as well. It's a double detent where both liners, maybe you can see that enough. There's like 2 detent balls that snap into holes in the blade. So it, you know, it's got some durability, but you know, not a locking knife, so that helps. Got a cool clip, really cool blade. Honestly, looks incredibly similar to the Terra. Big old pivot there. And I don't know, I just really like Duhara. I've had a couple different pieces of his. This is a much cheaper one, you know, not so much of a custom, but something about it is just really original. Like a reverse flickable front flip, not locking double detent Japanese half custom. Yeah, I don't know. I've just been really, really drawn to Duhara ever since I discovered him. So there's that. Now, this is the only time I broke my own rule. I gotta say it. Like I told you, when I first got into knives, I was immediately drawn to Kensei's work, and I ended up getting this cool Boker one. But I'm like, I gotta track down a just traditional Higanokami friction folder style custom knife by Kensei. And I found one and I got one, and I've handled a couple different customs of his work, and they're just so amazing, just truly, truly handmade customs. So many like little imperfections here, there, little blemishes, but that's just, I don't know, that's what just makes it have that soul. So yeah, just a friction folder. The jimping on this is, I've never seen anything so tiny, and he just did that by hand. So I got this decently recently, and I discovered it has like a tiny bit of the double detent type of thing that this one does. I don't know how he does it. It's not built into the scales or into the liners like this. It's like somewhere just in the pivot, and I don't know if you can really see it, but maybe you can hear it. Kind of clicks in, like it's not gonna swing closed. You're gonna break it just lightly. But yeah, beautiful friction folder. You know, I need a friction folder, need a double detent, need a lock back, and I need a slip joint. So these, the premise of these are sort of collectible makers I really admire. Iconic in multiple ways, but crappy. Kind of iconic, classic, slicey users. And these are just like god level, beautiful, beautiful knives. This is an Arno Bernard Wrinkles with abalone inlays. And I love this knife in particular because I really wanted a slip joint, but it's kind of hard to find a slip joint, first off, that's this premium and also comes with a clip. I don't know why, I just really wanted a slip joint with a clip. This knife is beautiful. Their most common knife is the Amamba. Got this really beautiful sort of polished satin, definitely fingerprint magnet there. But the way it lays in my hand is so incredibly comfortable and pretty strong. Like this is not gonna give real easy. Like you can, like, yeah, I don't know. But just beautiful, the type of thing you hand down to your grandkids, you know, your son, your whoever. It's a perfect gift. Just beautiful, classic, timeless piece, and the acoustics on this are real nice. Ooh. Let me clean that blade real quick. Yeah, I really wanted a slip joint. Really wanted a South African piece. I've handled a few over my time collecting, but nothing ever stayed, and this thing's just perfect. And the story behind it's just really fun. I think this is definitely going to be a forever keeper. There we go. And we're done. No. And this is my Grail. I've been hunting this for about a year and a half. I finally got lucky enough to stumble upon one in the secondary. I found one on the secondary years ago, and then the guy who bought it was like, oh, I've been hunting for years. And I'm like, come on, no one's ever gonna have this. I have seen these. This is the Rockstead shoe. I've seen ones with a different engraving, but this is really the one that I wanted. The apricot in sort of the silver variation. I mean, you gotta say it. Your collection is not complete without a Rockstead. This is a different level of knife. It's so unfathomable. Here we go. Full, true mirror polish, zero convex grind, whatever warranty, who cares. Unbelievably stunning knife. This is the pinnacle of my collection. It doesn't really, it is in some ways not the same as any of these, and that is, kind of maybe why it's put to the side a bit. It's not like a drop shut knife or anything like that. It's not really a flick open knife. You can actually, maybe a little bit of wrist flick. No, hold on, I got this. There we go. And if you hold it just right. But, it's really known just as like premium, elegant, top level materials, top level finishes. And yeah, another Japanese piece. So got a good bit of diversity in here. Finally a button lock at last. Nothing so drop shutty as like a Benchmade type of button. But there's the full collection walkthrough. Thank you so much for taking your time. I've sold a few already. I'll be shipping them soon, but on the chance that you happen to see this, feel free to reach out. This one, Cavill, Benchmade, NOC are available. Maybe the Maverick Oscar. Anyways, once again, thanks. This has been Knife Rabbit, Andrew, Total Hat, whatever. Really appreciate your time. This has been a long time in the works. And man, just a huge thank you to everyone, too many people to name that brought this about and helped me explore so many knives. I've probably gone through like 250 in the last 2 years, just under 2 years, and just came up with these as my top knives. So yeah, thanks again. And I don't know, follow me on Instagram or something at Knife Rabbit. Cool. Peace.